I first saw it, I thought that this was a US-made, very advanced next-generation fighter, and in fact that this would explain all the UFO sightings. It was only later to find out that that wasn't the case. We're looking at something, scarcely bigger than a basketball that's doing this.
When Bob Lazar first spoke about alien propulsion systems in 1989, his claims were dismissed as fantasy. Decades later, a metallic sphere falls from the sky over Colombia. Silent, seamless, and impossible.
They don't have any AI, any kind of fakery there. And then we know that the sphere was really flying or levitating and finally came down.
The object defies every known principle of modern physics. No visible welds, no conventional power source, no explanation. Yet its internal structure mirrors Lazar's most controversial claims with unsettling accuracy. And when researchers finally looked inside, what they found wasn't just advanced. It was something humanity may not be ready to understand. The object that defied everything. In March 2025, something extraordinary happened in the small town of Buga, Colombia. Residents watched in amazement as a metallic sphere zigzagged through the sky like nothing they'd ever seen before. The object moved in ways that made no sense. It stopped mid-air, changed direction instantly, then plummeted to Earth with a thud that shook the ground. David Veers was metal detecting in a field when he stumbled upon what would become one of the most talked-about discoveries of our time. There, sitting in a perfect circle of dead grass, was a smooth metallic ball about the size of a basketball. But this wasn't just any ordinary object. When Vez tried to lift it, something felt completely wrong. The sphere weighed only 4 to 5 pounds, lighter than a bag of sugar. Yet, within just a few weeks of being recovered, scientists made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the research community. The same object now weighed 22 pounds. Objects don't just gain weight by sitting on a shelf, but this one did. Scientists at Mexico's National Autonomous University ran test after test. What they found broke the rules of everything we understand about physics. The sphere could somehow reduce its own weight by exactly 81%. But the weight changes were just the beginning. Wherever this sphere had landed, it left behind a perfect circle of destruction. The soil was completely drained of moisture. Plants died instantly. Months later, nothing would grow in that spot. It was as if the ground had been sterilized by some unknown force. This wasn't some random piece of space junk or debris from a satellite. The precision of its effects, the way it manipulated its own weight, and the environmental damage, everything pointed to technology far beyond anything humans had ever created. But here's where the story gets truly mind-blowing. Because all of these impossible features matched perfectly with something Bob Lazar had described decades earlier. Bob Lazar's impossible claims. Back in 1989, a man named Bob Lazar made claims so outrageous that most people dismissed him as crazy. He said he had worked at a secret facility called S4, located near the famous Area 51 in Nevada. His job, according to Lazar, was to reverse engineer alien spacecraft that the government had recovered. Lazar described seeing 9 different alien craft stored in underground hangars. But what caught everyone's attention was his detailed explanation of how these ships worked. At the heart of each craft was a reactor about 18 inches in diameter. This reactor contained something Lazar called Element 115, a super-heavy material that didn't exist on our periodic table at the time. The reactor itself was a perfect dome with no visible seams, rivets, or joints anywhere. It looked like it had been molded from wax and then cooled, with no signs of how it was assembled. Inside this seamless shell was a central chip of element 115, surrounded by smaller spherical components arranged in a precise geometric pattern. But this was the part that made Lazar's story truly remarkable. He said this reactor could actually control gravity itself. By strengthening gravity waves, the craft could lower its own mass and inertia to nearly zero. This meant ships weighing tons could move as if they weighed nothing at all, performing impossible maneuvers without harming the people inside. Scientists mocked Lazar's claims. Element 115 wasn't real. Gravity control belonged in science fiction. The concept of seamless metal construction seemed impossible using any known manufacturing methods. His story was dismissed as a fascinating but unbelievable account from someone wanting attention. Yet, something unusual began happening over time. Parts of Lazar's story kept turning out correct. His descriptions of Area 51's layout and security measures were accurate, even though the government first denied the base existed. In 2003, scientists successfully created element 115 inside a laboratory, officially naming it Moscow. Even then, most experts stayed doubtful. Producing a few atoms of element 115 in a particle accelerator was completely different from Lazar's claims of stable pieces powering alien reactors. Without solid proof, his story stayed within speculation and conspiracy theories. That is, until a metallic sphere dropped from the sky in Colombia and changed everything we believed was possible. The impossible match. When scientists started closely studying the Buga Sphere, they couldn't ignore the powerful similarities to what Bob Lazar had described 36 years before. The connections were so detailed and numerous that calling them coincidence became harder to accept. First, there was the size. Lazar's alien reactor measured around 18 inches across. The Sphere measured roughly 20 inches wide. Though not exact, they were extremely close in size, especially since Lazar described it purely from memory decades earlier. The way it was built was equally mysterious. Just like Lazar's reactor, the Buga Sphere seemed formed from one single continuous piece of material. X-ray scans showed no seams, welds, or joints anywhere on its surface. Metallurgists were stunned by how such a flawless spherical object could be created without any visible construction marks. Even more fascinating was what scientists discovered inside. Using modern imaging technology, researchers found the sphere contained a central nucleus, or chip, at its center, surrounded by 16 to 18 smaller spheres placed in a perfect geometric arrangement. This closely matched Lazar's description of a central element 115 chip, surrounded by smaller spherical components. But the similarities went even further. The sphere also held a network of 52 fiber-like strands running throughout its interior. These structures looked like fiber optic cables and passed through 3 circular layers of material forming its inner framework. Although Lazar never specifically mentioned fiber optics, he described an inner system that appeared to move energy in ways normal electronics couldn't. The most astonishing similarity was gravity control. Lazar claimed alien reactors could lower a craft's mass by strengthening gravity waves. The Buga Sphere showed this exact ability, lowering its weight by 81% using some unknown process. These weren't general similarities that could easily be dismissed. They were precise technical details that matched with accuracy that seemed impossible to fake. If someone tried creating a hoax using Lazar's story, they would need technology far beyond anything publicly known to build such an object. Dr. Gary Nolan from Stanford University studied the sphere and made a surprising admission. Although he was 99% certain it was made by humans, he couldn't explain the seamless structure, the fiber network, or the changes in weight. The technology remained beyond current manufacturing abilities, at least based on anything publicly available. This completely changes how we see Lazar's testimony, because we now have physical evidence that reflects his descriptions in ways that are incredibly difficult to ignore. The secret network inside. The discovery of the fiber optic network inside the Buga Sphere revealed possibilities scientists are still struggling to explain. These weren't normal fiber optics like those used in internet cables. They were something far more sophisticated, possibly representing technology many decades ahead of what we currently use publicly. Traditional fiber optics carry information using light pulses through glass or plastic strands, but the filaments inside the sphere appeared made from an unknown material that could do far more than basic data transfer. Some scientists believe they could act as channels for quantum communication, using entangled photons to send information instantly across huge distances. Quantum communication is no longer just theory. Chinese and American laboratories have already demonstrated early quantum communication systems capable of sending encrypted data in ways that are almost impossible to intercept. The technology inside the sphere could represent a fully developed version of what we are only starting to build. The pattern of these fibers was especially fascinating. They connected the central chip to the surrounding microspheres in a design that suggested highly advanced information processing. If the sphere was truly a probe or observation device, this network could function as its sensory system, gathering environmental data in ways we can barely understand. What made this discovery even more important was how it explained missing parts of Lazar's original story. He mainly described the propulsion system, explaining how the reactor produced gravity waves, but shared little about the control systems or data processing. The fiber network suggested that alien technology, if real, relied on light instead of electronic systems to process information. This makes sense for a civilization capable of controlling gravity. Light moves faster than electricity and produces no electromagnetic interference that could disturb sensitive gravity generators. The implications were extraordinary. If the sphere used quantum communication, it could instantly transmit data about Earth back to its source, no matter the distance. Every measurement, interaction, and observation could be shared in real time with whoever sent it. This raised serious concerns about privacy and surveillance on a completely new level. If advanced probes were observing Earth through quantum networks, traditional detection methods would be useless. We could be constantly monitored without knowing or stopping it. The discovery also suggested that Lazar's story, if true, was only one small part of a much larger technological mystery we are just beginning to see. The pattern becomes clear. Just as researchers believed the Buga Sphere was a rare and isolated anomaly, they uncovered something that made everything far more important. This was not a one-off event. Similar metallic orbs had been appearing around the world more often, forming a pattern that was impossible to ignore. In 2023, a doctor leading the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office delivered an official statement to Congress that stunned the scientific community. He confirmed that many unidentified anomalous phenomena detected by military sensors were metallic spheres, usually 1 to 4 meters wide, capable of hovering perfectly still or suddenly accelerating to extreme speeds without any visible propulsion. The Pentagon even released declassified footage of what they called the Mosul Orb, a metallic sphere recorded by a U.S. military drone over Iraq in 2016. The object looked remarkably similar to the Buga Sphere, a smooth reflective ball traveling through the sky with what seemed like controlled movement. Military experts could not explain what it was or how it functioned. These were not random events spread out over decades. Similar metallic orbs had been reported across the United Kingdom, where commercial airline pilots encountered spherical objects near major airports. Airline passengers filmed bright orbs that appeared to pace their planes, matching exact speeds and altitudes that should have been impossible for any known aircraft. In Mexico, Argentina, and throughout South America, sightings of plasma orbs and metallic spheres rose sharply between 2023 and 2025. What made these reports especially compelling was how consistent they were. Witnesses described the same movement patterns, the same appearance, and the same environmental effects. Historical records revealed even deeper links. In 1974, the Betz mystery sphere was discovered by a family in Florida after a wildfire. That metallic ball was also seamless, and Navy X-rays showed it contained smaller spherical masses inside, within a layered shell design. It was said to display unusual behavior, including rolling on its own and producing vibrating sounds. Pentagon officials pointed out that these objects were often seen in active war zones and near military bases. This sparked serious concerns about their purpose. Were they surveillance tools? If so, whose technology was behind them? The pattern pointed to an organized phenomenon rather than random sightings. These spheres seemed to act with clear intent, appearing at strategically sensitive locations and displaying abilities far beyond known human engineering. Bob Lazar reinforced everything about the Buga Sphere by offering a framework that explained not just a single object, but an entire category of phenomena that had confused military and civilian observers for decades. The parallels were far too many and far too precise to dismiss as mere coincidence. Scientists uncovered a stunning revelation. As the investigation into the Buga Sphere moved forward, researchers uncovered something no one expected. The startling discovery forced everyone to rethink not only the sphere itself, but the entire phenomenon surrounding it. Dr. Elena Vasquez from the University Autónoma Mexico achieved the breakthrough while performing an in-depth spectrographic study of the sphere's surface. Using sophisticated laser technology, she identified something that sent waves of disbelief through the research team. The metallic exterior was not merely seamless, it was actively transforming at the molecular level. The sphere appeared to be repairing itself. Tiny scratches and flaws caused during handling slowly faded away over time. The surface was rearranging its atomic structure to preserve flawless smoothness, unlike anything previously observed in material science. Yet that was not the most astonishing revelation. As Vasquez continued examining the sphere, she detected isotopic signatures in the metal that matched nothing naturally found on Earth. The object contained traces of elements with neutron ratios, indicating they had been altered using technology far beyond current human capability. Even more alarming was what occurred when the team attempted to remove a small sample for testing. Every instrument they tried, diamond saws, laser cutters, plasma torches, failed to leave even the slightest mark. The material of the sphere seemed to absorb and disperse energy in a way that made it practically indestructible by conventional means. Then Dr. Vasquez uncovered the finding that changed everything. Buried within the isotopic data was a pattern that first appeared to be meaningless noise. But after running it through pattern recognition software, she discovered something extraordinary. The isotopic signatures were organized into a mathematical sequence, specifically prime numbers. This was not accidental. Someone or something had intentionally embedded a mathematical code into the very atoms forming the sphere's structure. The consequences were overwhelming. Either this reflected technology advanced enough to manipulate matter at the quantum scale, or they were facing an intelligence that operated in ways completely unlike human thinking. When fully interpreted, the mathematical sequence seemed to represent coordinates, not locations on Earth, but points in space relative to our solar system. The coordinates directed attention to an area about 37 light-years away in the direction of the constellation Reticulum. Astronomers were astonished. That region contained the Zeta Reticuli star system, the same place Bob Lazar had claimed the alien craft came from in 1989. The odds of this being mere coincidence were so tiny, they were virtually impossible. The unthinkable technology. The technology displayed by the Buga Sphere challenged nearly every core principle of physics and engineering scientists believed they understood. As researchers looked deeper into how the object operated, they encountered effects that appeared to break the basic laws of nature. The ability to manipulate weight was the clearest impossibility. Newton's laws of motion say mass remains constant. Objects do not simply become lighter or heavier unless material is added or removed. Yet the sphere repeatedly showed it could change its effective mass by more than 80% through an unknown process. A physicist at MIT suggested the sphere might be producing what he described as a localized gravitational field distortion. In simple terms, the device could be forming its own pocket of altered gravity, making it effectively weightless while still keeping its solid structure intact. This aligned closely with Bob Lazar's explanations of how alien propulsion systems functioned. Lazar had claimed that by amplifying gravity waves, a craft could reduce its mass and inertia to nearly zero, allowing it to perform extreme maneuvers without harming those inside. The environmental effects were just as puzzling. The sphere's ability to pull moisture from the soil and cool the nearby air indicated it was influencing molecular motion in ways current technology cannot replicate. It seemed to draw thermal energy from its surroundings and transform it into another form. But into what? The self-repairing surface created yet another technological paradox. Materials do not typically rearrange their atomic structure to heal damage. That would require exact control over molecular bonds and atomic patterns, suggesting technology far more advanced than anything humans have created. Even the fiber optic network inside the sphere functioned on principles that stretched the limits of known physics. If those filaments were truly capable of quantum communication, they would need to preserve quantum entanglement across large distances, something modern physics says should be impossible because of environmental disruption. The flawless construction may have been the most confusing element of all. Producing a perfect sphere with intricate internal systems and no visible assembly marks would demand methods unknown to any current industry. The object seemed grown instead of assembled, similar to a crystal forming naturally in liquid. Bob Lazar reinforced everything about this impossible technology by outlining a framework that showed how such devices might exist. His descriptions of element 115, gravity wave amplification, and seamless alien manufacturing suddenly felt less like science fiction and more like a guidebook for technology humanity was only beginning to confront. The remarkable conclusion from all this research was that the Buga Sphere represented technology far beyond human capability, yet operating on principles Lazar had described decades earlier with striking precision.